Good afternoon. We're live. Welcome everyone to Epic Lunch and Learn. I'm Dante Royster. I'm your host, your mortgage broker, your author of the Ultimate Mortgage Guide. How's everyone doing? Hoping everyone had a great weekend. We are 50 episodes in, so this one is very cool to have 50 episodes in and have a great guest. Ari, how are you?
Doing fantastic.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on today. This is going to be pretty cool. We're live right now on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So, got a variety of people. And once again, if you have questions for Ari, if you have questions just in general on the conversation that we're going to have today, go ahead and just put it in the comments section. We're going to head and talk about it. And what's funny to me is, every city has its prophets, right? Some predict storms, other predict progress. And so, you have been named by Forbes magazine as the Oracle of Austin. That's pretty neat. So how did that come about?
Well, I think it came about by we bought a bunch of stuff before Austin really took off. And I think it made us look a lot smarter than we are.
Understood. They just to give you an idea, my in-laws used to live right in Austin. And so I've been down there, and one of the things, when was I in Austin? I'd probably say 25. So it was around probably 21, right around. So about 4 years ago, I was in Austin area, and I noticed all this construction around the airport, all the construction that was kind of going on. You guys got to work on those highways down there, but overall, I definitely did notice this construction. So why are people moving to Austin?
That's there's a lot of reasons. And when you look at, the psychology of, why, because real estate is a people business at the end of the day, and understanding where people want to live, where they want to play, where they want to work, are very, very important. And Austin checks all those boxes. You look at, if you take a top-down approach, you look at Texas. There's a lot of reason people are moving to Texas. It's business friendly, no state income taxes and all that. And you can get, the dollar goes a lot further than maybe it does in New York or California. So you have those reasons. But parts of Texas, we do a lot of development, and obviously in Dallas and, all over the state. But Austin is beautiful, for lack of a better, you drive in the city, the city's built on lakes. You're close to the hill country. You got trees, and it's dubbed the music capital of America. So you have these incredible live shows. You have great food, young, vibrant culture that has all sorts of different types of folks. And Austin is not really a city. It's very much a town on steroids. So you can come here and you get a lot of the great parts of being in Texas, but the joke is Austin's not in Texas. So you kind of get the best parts of Texas here for all those reasons.
Yeah, they say keep Austin weird. I remember.
Yeah,
and you got Joe.
To do it.
Well, you got Joe Rogan down there too.
You do. You got Rogan. You got a little company called Tesla that has their headquarters now. You have Oracle's headquarters.
Just a little.
You got another little company that you might have heard of called Dell Computers. That was founded and headquartered here as well. So there's a lot of big business, and also X's headquarters is here too, SpaceX's headquarters. So, all these reasons are bringing really smart, innovative folks into the city and diversifying us out of the more financial services that you see in Dallas, the oil and gas that you see in Houston. So Austin has brought this new kind of breath of fresh air of young minds that are seeing the world through this technology vantage point, different from some of the stereotypical reasons that you see Texas, that are also still thriving, as you see from what's going on with the stock exchange in Dallas, et cetera.
Sure. Now, obviously, you bought properties, you said, in Austin, kind of before the big boom per se. So were these apartment buildings, or what type of properties did you invest in?
All sorts of stuff. And we own hundreds of acres of land to begin with. And we built industrial complexes. We just opened up a new elementary school in Kyle, which is just south of Austin, single family homes, apartments, office buildings. If you look at our track record as a firm, and mind you, I started this company with a $3,500 loan 10 years ago. And our investors are public pension plans, insurance companies, et cetera. But we've invested in 38 cities, 13 states, and 7 different asset classes. So, so Texas has gotten a lot of the attention of the stuff that we've done, but we very much had a national presence. But COVID was probably the best year for us in a lot of ways. We did 16 major deals during COVID, which turned out to be pretty fortunate. Some of the deals were pretty incredible. Some of them in hindsight, maybe we shouldn't have bought, but that's the beauty of a portfolio. If your winners win more than your losers, you're doing okay.
Exactly. Obviously from a business aspect, it's always about catching trends early and having the vision to kind of, do you see something that's going to open before it happens? The blue ocean, right? The book. And so that's kind of what, intrigued me about the conversation today with you, is that you were kind of able to see, maybe an opportunity. So are there components to concepts as far as what's a good investment, what's not a good investment? Are there things that you kind of look at and say, hey, these are the, demographics? I was just curious on your answer to that.
Sure. Absolutely. I think one of the key metrics is there's been over 400 people a day moving to Austin for over 12 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. Put that in perspective. Every 5 years, you'd be adding the entire city of Pittsburgh to Austin. So we saw those trends. So that one number, believe it or not, was very informative for us in 2017, 18, 19, of saying like, okay, well, what am I missing? Like, people are moving here in crazy numbers. The city of Kyle, which we're one of the largest landowners, we own 318 acres and built this beautiful master plan community that we designed in-house with 1,000 single family homes, a beautiful commercial Texas town square, 1,400 apartments, an elementary school, 60 acres of green space, which is really a prototype for this concept internally that we talk about putting unity back in community. And this town or city now is about 20 miles south of Austin and about 40 miles north of San Antonio on one stretch of highway. So when you take 2 of the most populated cities in the US, you can make some inferences that you might not know when they're going to pop, but you have a high degree of certainty that something interesting is going to happen. So in Kyle, in 2009, there was no stoplight in the entire city.
Wow.
And it was a town of 5,000. Now there's 55,000 people, and it's one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. So for us, looking at those sheer numbers and seeing Google's second largest office in the world, Facebook's second largest office in the world, those were numbers where we kind of looked at each other in the boardroom like, is this like, if this many people are coming,
right?
You got to believe that. I mean, a broke clock is right twice a day too. So, we Correct. Figure, what would the risk look like? So we started buying, irreplaceable pieces of land and getting them zoned and entitled and ready. And it just so happened that wave kicked, interest rates stayed low, maybe a little too long, and went high a little bit too quick. It's another discussion.
Sure.
And as I said, we were able to tap into our network. I'm born in Austin, Texas. It's my hometown. That's another, maybe little small nuance for all of this of, when Right. It's home, you know the local players, and we were able to jump. We were able to jump off the cliff, and we built a plane on the way down. And luckily we were able to do something really special for our clients.
Oh, that's awesome. Actually, we maybe about 10 episodes ago, we had a Kyle Allstate insurance agent on, and he was talking about the budding nature of Kyle. So to your point, I understand just how big that is, and just that city is just growing. And so that's interesting.
It's a great city. Travis Mitchell, who was the mayor for many years, a dear friend of mine, he was at the groundbreaking ceremony when we first started doing all the horizontal development, because, a 318 acre site is, you're building a mini city, right? So you have to bring in water and power, and so we started doing all that stuff. And I asked him, I was like, when you became the mayor of Kyle, like, what was the agenda? He's like, I just wanted people on their Facebook page to say they lived in Kyle, not in Austin. And and it was a pretty funny premise, where he was very successful in doing that, and going on to do other stuff. But being a part of designing community and designing these cities. First, you design the cities, and then over time, if you do it well, the city starts to design you. So we're very proud of a lot of the stuff we do. A lot of this design work in-house, from the exterior design work to the interiors and the color schematics, and we take a lot of that seriously. I was a English literature major by trade, and reading the best books in the world about history and culture and characters and different timelines, and all of that starts to play a part into having the privilege of designing where these cities are going, cities that we love so much and that have some of the biggest companies in the world that their employees are inhabiting, and figuring out how all that's going to mesh together. And you mentioned the highways, and as I said, Dallas and Houston were designed to be metropolises. They had these massive highway systems, and it was we knew that there was going to be that type of growth. In fact, the latest stat I saw is that Dallas will be the most populated city in the United States of America by 2045.
Right.
And Austin just was not that. Austin was a sleepy little hippie town, and it became a phenomenon for what it is today. If you asked anybody 20 years ago, they would have said no shot of this is what Austin would be. Now it's really easy to see that it was inevitable that it was going to come here, but that's not how it was a few short years ago. And I think we've given the market the belief that we have a little clairvoyance, when in reality there's a lot of mathematics and a lot of deduction, and quite frankly, a lot more luck than I care to admit.
No, understood. No, and you're being humble, and I appreciate that. That in the mortgage space, right? I'm a mortgage owner. I own a mortgage company. One of the things that we track are birth rates, because that'll tell you population growth. And so we knew that right around this time frame, the number one population is millennials and Gen Zers. And so it's a great opportunity right now that regardless of what the interest rates were going to be, they were still going to be buying and selling, because it's inevitable. So, I am a math guy to that point as well. I'm curious now, well, a couple of things, you got my head going, but as far as just the red line as far as permits and working with the mayor, like you said, how has that been? How has the transition of just, being able to create these types of things?
Well, there's a desperate amount of innovation that's needed in the real estate business. When you look at where we are, in this fourth industrial revolution, so to speak, in this exponential J curve of growth from technology, from AI. And, I think if you said 3 years ago, 1 out of 5 people wouldn't even have heard the word AI before, and now it's on everybody's lips. I certainly use ChatGPT every day myself, and
Sure.
I think everybody should, just to get a advancement on their own daily productivity, so to speak. But real estate has been historically archaic. The folks that run the real estate business at the highest levels are in their late 70s and 80s. And, the way that they've seen the world, and the vantage point, they lived in a world where there wasn't even a computer, and so it's been very slow to change, which is really the opportunity in a lot of different ways, even the zoning and the permitting. And, the civil servants that do this work, they're doing a great job. They're working as hard as they possibly can, but their systems are antiquated. Their computers are antiquated. The way the filing systems work are 30 years behind. So we see a huge advancement in how all of that is going to actually happen, in terms of not only how houses are built, but there hasn't been much innovation in how a single family starter home is built in 30 years. And so we're starting to 3D print a bunch of houses and starting to turn that into some robotics work, with still sticking to the norm of how we build apartments and super talls in our industrial facilities. But we're starting to look forward to where's the puck going. And we're going to see a lot of innovation. And I believe that's going to bring the cost basis down. That's really going to help first-time home buyers, blue-collar workers, and, normal people like me, that are starting in their lives at that phase, to be able to buy and be able to hold. And I look forward to emerging of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to eliminate, duplicative processes to bring down borrowing costs. And then, of course, hoping that this Chairman Powell and his infinite wisdom begins to lower rates a little bit quicker. but I'm very much looking forward to innovation across the board, and real estate is just ripe for it in every way, shape, or form, for how we build, the materials we use, the permitting process, and all the jobs that it creates, you know, from roofers to plumbers to electricians, and, you know, because it's really done boots on the ground, which is really exciting to continue to have these types of jobs created when there's a lot of fear in the market with all the layoffs you're seeing from Amazon and UPS and all these different things. So I'm hoping that we start to fill that delta of the 5-6 million houses that we are short in the United States, and the 500,000 houses in Texas that we're short. So once those rates come down, I think Epic Mortgage is going to do spectacularly well. And I think a lot of other folks are going to be pretty happy once this pent-up demand really starts to open.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Obviously, Jerome Powell's contract expires May 2026. You know, I imagine that, you know, our president who hired him will fire him, and we'll probably see a whole different direction come June of next year. And it's just necessary as far as just slow triggers. But, you know, what's not helping right now is obviously the government shutdown, where we don't get enough reports going on. But let's pivot to obviously your vision for Y'all Street in Dallas. So, you know, you spoke of Dallas. Why is this such a passion project for you?
Well, I have a very personal connection to this block that is actually built on physically. You know, my grandfather and I was very close to my grandfather. My father was an Iranian immigrant. And so, you know, work ethic and education and is in our DNA. And I was talking to my dad about this recently, but, you know, I was driving through downtown Dallas and telling my grandfather, who was a psychiatrist, was a medical doctor, you know, 6-time gold medalist, just this huge Renaissance person, that I wanted to be a doctor like him. And, you know, he gave me this kind of look that only an Iranian grandfather could give you. No, you're going to be a businessman, effectively. And I'm roughly translating from Farsi, which is actually my first language. And I was like, well, what's a businessman? And, you know, just with this funny look, my grandma drawing, he's like, looks out the window of the car and he's like, you see all these buildings, you know, in downtown Dallas? It's like, right. Yeah. He's like, one day you're going to buy them all. Like, okay. And then my father, you know, me barely getting out of high school, saying to me, you're going to become an attorney. You know, my father's an attorney as well. And so be an attorney, like, why? He's like, I'll tell you what, after you become an attorney, you can be an exotic dancer for all I care, but you're going to become an attorney, which I did, listening to him, of course. And so growing up in Dallas in middle school and high school, seeing the growth of the city, and then this all culminated into a very stark memory for me in Dallas at 1899 McKinney. And I know the address now for a reason we'll get to, across the street from where Goldman's new campus is, where the new New York Stock Exchange, Texas is. There used to be a nightclub called Glass. Doesn't mean anything to you, but I was at Texas A&M University. My chief of staff was at UT, and another one of our dear friends was at SMU in Dallas. So we met up one weekend, and, you know, we're standing in line to go to the latest and greatest nightclub, and this huge line outside, and it starts a torrential downpour. I'm talking about raining to where you can't see in front of you. Wow. And McKinney has a little bit of a slant to it, like this. And so by the time I got to the front door, my white Air Force Ones, which I still have, by the way,
nice,
were completely covered in mud. And I'm like drenched out of a movie. Like, and the bouncer kind of looks at me like, no, like there's, and so I'm standing on the side of the road. Like, you know, I wish it was a little bit more insightful, you know, than it is now, but I was like, well, this kind of sucks. Like, I drove in from College Station. I'm standing here. We can't get in, you know, whatever. And 15 years later, I went back and bought the building. That's awesome. And proceeded to go through one of the most comprehensive zoning cases in the history of Dallas, Texas, to not only change the height from about 20 feet to 400 feet. And, and this particular site is directly across the street from where the new campus is. So we'll be building what we believe to be the seminal piece of not only architecture, but the crown jewel of Dallas, across the street, just in time to have a place to live for all these new executives that are coming from Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, and for the New York Stock Exchange, Texas division, where we'll literally have a front row seat from the penthouses of that new building to literally watch what we're calling the re-centralization of American finance, which is going to be home in Dallas, Texas.
That's amazing. That's awesome. That's a great story. I'm curious. So I mean, what's your take on just the whole remote employee per se, or do you think that's going to phase out? I mean, because obviously buying commercial, property right now, that's always been a topic right now.
Sure. I think the numbers have been pretty conclusive. I go with what Jamie Dimon has said, who has probably the best access to information and one of the best CEOs, certainly in modern history, that remote work, just the productivity has fallen off a cliff. Look, I think there is absolutely some jobs in some categories where remote work is very effective. I think in some things that require singularity in your work process, where you don't need maybe as much collaboration with other folks. But as humans, we're tribal beings, I believe. And being in that community of our work community, building our work family and talking together, laughing together, eating lunch together, and just that brainstorming that can only happen, in my belief, or certainly has happened for the 2 million years of human history, has happened in person. So I'm of the belief certainly that there's something about that's irreplaceable. And there's certainly many studies that have verified that productivity and, quite frankly, the workplace happiness that people have of, I think they miss being around their coworkers, and they might say, oh, it's a little cheaper on my gas money, and, I can stay in my pajamas a little longer and wear a suit on the top and, maybe my underwear on the bottom when I'm at work. And I think there's some conveniences that go with that. But I think the ultimate fulfillment and the overall productivity for an individual, their team, their company, and ultimately the service that you can bring to customers, I think is an in-person gig.
Awesome. So as far as are you working directly with Goldman Sachs, as far as you building and meeting their needs or wants, or are you kind of just building and they will come?
We have a very close relationship with Goldman Sachs, with a lot of the individuals that are there. They're obviously just a elite firm and the best of the best of what they do. And there's certainly many opportunities to collaborate. They have a huge, one of the largest real estate finance businesses in the world. They have incredible leadership. They're investors themselves. And so there's certainly going to be a lot of collaboration, whether through the financing vehicles or other modalities. But it's pretty exciting and they've been there. Goldman's been in Dallas, and a lot of people don't know this, since 1965. So the 4,000 employees that are going in this new campus, which will be their second largest office in the world, were all hired from Dallas. So there's a massive presence that they have all there. And I think that they're going to see enormous success. And as I said, as American finance is re-centralized in Dallas, and depending on the fate of this mayoral election going on in New York, I think people are going to be voting with their feet. And if they don't feel treated as well in those states, I think Texas, Florida, Tennessee are going to be huge recipients of some of the policy failures that we've seen on the East and West Coast.
There is no doubt there's been a huge migration to the Sun Belt. There is no doubt. I did a little stats as far as 62% of the U.S. population, falls within the Sun Belt. And so, that is right up your alley to what you're saying. And obviously with the turmoil with New York, and that will be interesting to see what happens there. And then obviously, with the governor in California, losing my train of thought on him, but it'll be interesting to see. But if he's going to make a run for for the presidency in 2028, I don't know. We'll see if California is open.
Well, and the other side of that is people are voting for these characters also. And so what I think about more than anything when I look at some of these candidates, and I'm a business person myself. I'm not a politician. I don't at some point the business gets so big that you inevitably have maybe what could be deemed political conversations working with state
Of course.
reps, and okay, but there's patriots and civil servants that can do those jobs way better than me. So I try not to pontificate too much about it. But I can say from a people standpoint, being a voter myself, being an American myself, being a minority American myself, there's not enough dialogue around the fact that some of these characters in New York and California, they wouldn't have this much of the limelight if they didn't have a lot of voter support. So I'm more interested to see, the thought processes of the voters, because in a represented republic, if that many people are voting for you, I think we have a much bigger problem in understanding why are they voting for these folks, and what are their motivations, and how do they feel that way, and how have they come to those conclusions. So I'm very interested to investigate myself, like how we got there and how these folks are getting to that point, and see if there's a way to appease their beliefs and maybe find some middle ground between the two extremes. Because I think we've it's become very black or white, on these sides of the discussion, right. And I'd like to understand a little bit more of the overlap between the two of them.
To that point, I did a monologue. I do monologues on Fridays, and the presidential election, 75 million people voted for Donald Trump, 72 million voted for Kamala Harris. But what I was most interested in was the 90 million people that didn't vote. 90 million people opted not to even participate, and
that's
so
scary.
It is. And is there the belief, Iranian background, the belief of the American dream, and Patrick Bet David, another Iranian himself, or Assyrian, same type of concept of, a lot of migrants come here with the belief of the American dream of, a better life. And now we have 90 million people that don't vote. That's scary, because that changes. I mean, we don't know what we're doing.
Sure. I think there's a lot to be said about that. And, but what I do like is that in this country, we still have the right to not vote, and you have the right to vote. And there's something to be said about that. But I agree with you, figuring out a way to talk to the folks that aren't voting and understanding their mentality, understanding their beliefs and wants, because this American dream, first of all, is financed by the housing market. Let's start with that. So the white picket fence and the Cary Grant movies that certainly got my ancestors interested in America, and the promise that is the American dream. We need to make sure that we're listening to the people, because contrary to popular belief, this has not been as much of a melting pot as was discussed. It's really become more of a quilt, where there's a lot of just segregated parts with different communities and different cultures within cities. And New York is a great example of that. You can go to Chinatown, and you can go to these different parts where people have been. So I'm interested in this new American species, for lack of a better term, of how that's gonna melt, what they believe and what they want. But I think the more that we stick to having freedoms, and if that freedom is to not vote, and that freedom is to vote, me as an attorney who, swore to protect the Constitution, as a believer in the Constitution, that freedom is what the most important thing is that we're able to do and choose and speak or not speak, because not speaking, sometimes that silence can be the loudest thing you say.
Sure. It is something. If we could decrease the non-voters, though, just so we know what you're thinking, or that you have a belief,
that'd be great.
That would be great. A lot of what you do, and at least from what I see online, is a lot of legacy and purpose. That really drives a lot of your decisions. So, what is your mission? What are you hoping to evolve? Evolution, younger mind. What are you trying to create with all the buying up of land and building opportunities for others? What are you trying to do?
Well, I think the purpose is, as I said, as an Iranian American, your family name, your heritage, I come from an ancient culture, arguably the oldest culture in the world, depending on which historian you read, and having something that's very thoughtful long-term in whatever thing that I do is very, very important. And so in its most basic sense, it's to increase the standard of how we live and how we work for all people that we encounter. That's the bare purpose statement of everything that I like to do. Is if we get a piece of land, we want to leave it better than how we found it. If it's a conversation with somebody, we want that conversation. We want to know that we're adding value. So as a real estate person, value add is an entire asset class of how you look at things. And I like to look at our business, look at my life mission, our team, our clients, our investors, everybody that we serve. We'd like to be value add. And I know that sounds a little corny or a little simple, but if I feel like we are adding value to every dialogue, every development, every building, every land, every conversation, I'll sleep a little easier at night.
That's awesome. We're going to take care of some housekeeping notes real fast, so just hang with us. This episode today is sponsored by Epic Mortgage. Whether you're buying, investing, or refinancing, call Epic today. That's 708-905-5300. That's 708-905-5300. It's your dreams, your goals. Let's plan together. Now, if you are looking for a blueprint, a step-by-step playbook for turning your mortgage into a wealth-building machine, that book right over my shoulder is available right on Amazon. It's the Ultimate Mortgage Guide. Make sure you check it out. Now, after the show today, make sure you go to the YouTube channel, Epic Spotlight. Take a look at our most recent podcast. It was with Sean D. Nelson. Sean Nelson is a visionary founder and CEO of Lovesac. Discover how Sean went from making giant beanbags in his parents' basement to leading $1 billion public company. In this episode, Sean shares hard-earned lessons from his 25-year journey, the secrets behind Lovesac's innovative design for life philosophy, and practical insights for entrepreneurs and business owners. Whether you're starting a business or scaling for growth, get inspired by stories of resilience, creativity, and relentless ambition that Sean presents. So make sure you check out the Sean D. Nelson podcast. Now, we do have some preferred listings that are on the market. Couple listings right here are 12707 Sin Bay Court in Jacksonville, Florida. It's new construction. It's a 4-bed, 3-bath home going for $375. Contact Charday Nix 904-520-8041. We have a investment property opportunity, 16029 Circle Drive in Markham, Illinois. It's a single family, 3-bed, 1-bath going for $105,000. Contact Keith Terry 773-655-1360. We also have 412 North Ridgeland Avenue, Elmhurst, Illinois. It's a 3-bed, 1-bath, single-family house going for $410,000. Contact Laretha Lowry, 708-670-8165. We have a 4-bed, 2.5-bath at 6200 South Marsh Lane, Matson, Illinois. Single-family house. It's going for $270,000. Contact L'Oreal Flowers, 312-774-4230. And we have 4634 Deepwood Court, Bowie, Maryland, going, I do not have the price on this, and my apologies, but contact Phil Dyson for more information. That's 443-280-1842. All these preferred listings are available on my website at DanteRoyster.com. So make sure you check it out, DanteRoyster.com. All right, back to it. Appreciate that, Ari. I love that mission. I really do. Leaving it better off than you saw it. So as far as investing goes, when you're talking about real estate, you're investing not only in commercial, but you're also doing some multifamily, some affordable housing per se. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So we're agnostic to the asset class. As I said, we've been in 38 cities, 13 states, just about every asset class, give or take a couple nuances. And, for us, it's about back to that community concept is, how are we adding value to that area? Like we built this 600,000 square foot industrial facility, right close to where the new gigafactory is. We in fact started our construction and a certain time. In fact, I bought the 50 acres there thinking it was going to be my youngest daughter's problem in 20 years. The gigafactory announced. So we ended up building it. And one of our investors in the project is one of the biggest real estate investors on the planet, and was, very, very successful. But to that point, we had never built an industrial facility, but that's what it was needed at that moment. So we spend a lot of time within entitlements and zoning to see, as a community enhances, the needs of that community change, and so because of that, we have close to 3,000 multifamily units. that are in some sort of pre-development at this moment, meaning they're permitted or in various entitlement stages to be built, because that's what the need is going to be. And so thousands of single family homes that I deem them more essential housing than affordable per se. And I think there's a nuanced difference between those terms. And so understanding these cities that are growing at such a rapid speed, they need so many different things. So zooming out and being able to understand what that is and filling that need that the tenants, the customers, the cities truly need is where our focus is. Like, we're going to build a remarkable self-storage facility, which we've done a ton of self-storage over the years in Phoenix, which is in the opportunity zone across from ASU. Will be, I think close to 10 stories of climate controlled storage because it's desperately needed. People are moving there. Some of the houses are smaller. And so that's where our focus is like, what is the need going to be? Where's the puck going, so to speak? And designing first on paper and first on Excel models, and then later developing where the need is actually going to be. And a lot of that will be multifamily, a lot of industrial, a lot of data centers, et cetera.
Opportunity zones allow a tax credit, right? Thanks to the big, beautiful bill.
Sure. So opportunity zones have been around a little bit longer than that. There were some refinements, but in a short term, what they're meaning to say is to really spur development in areas that need development, and giving developers and owners an added incentive to do that. So in a very simplistic way, there's certain areas that you look at on a map that were deemed what you call an opportunity zone, where you can, if you own it from anywhere from 7 up to 10 years, it can be completely tax-free on the invested amount. So if you sold something and you had a big, big tax bill, and you invested in an opportunity zone to help develop those neighborhoods that need that type of investment, and held it for 10 years, you would pay no taxes on the first money invested and then the money out. And I would highly recommend anybody hearing this to speak to their CPA, speak to their, to financial experts to explain the nuances. But at a high level, that's what it's looking to do. The purpose was to really build and spur development in areas that maybe that needed a little extra incentive from developers or other owners.
Got it. I want to go back to your first question, or previous to that question, about the affordability, because obviously that's still a major issue that a lot of people are facing. A stat that I had was there's about 66 affordable homes per 100 renter households. And so I was curious, how does your project really address that for affordability purposes?
Well, it depends. I mean, we have so many different projects going up. There's several that are addressing that exact issue. Like in Kyle, there, 1,000 single family homes are designed to be for first-time home buyers. That the price point that they're at is certainly within the median range of what would be essential housing. And, we'd envisioned, newly married couples with their first kid be able to walk to the elementary school, be able to enjoy that 60 acres of green space, and, and build a life as they start to grow their families, and maybe their pay increases and they advance in their jobs and they can go to other places. But, the super tall high rise on McKinney and in Dallas is certainly for people that are maybe at a different stage of their life, that want to be renters, want to be in the newest, hippest, most expensive corridor of Dallas. So, and that's the need that's there. And so it goes back to that point of what is the need within that nuance, because the national averages and the national real estate market is just inaccurate now. You need to measure markets, in New York from street to street, not even a neighborhood, of what the values are. And on other, in other markets like Dallas or Austin, same thing. You have to look at neighborhoods, you have to look at proximity to downtown. And so really assessing the real estate on a area by area, sub-market by sub-market basis is, I believe, the best way to get an accurate understanding of what the needs are, what the demand is, and what the economics are.
For the everyday investor, I've always encouraged, the everyday investor to always focus on hotels. And I said, find a hotel and know that's going to be a good place to invest around, because obviously they've done the homework, right? They've done the macro look on an area to know exactly where to, place this for the most profit for them. So I've always used that kind of mechanism as hotels as a good barometer for an area that you might want to invest around. What do you think about that?
Well,
It's different.
I think that sounds good. I think that sounds like I think you're basing it in some reasoning that makes a lot of sense. For me, for individual investors, and certainly for myself, I would buy an index fund. If it was me, I'd find a great financial advisor, a fee-only financial advisor, and someone that does this every day. And from a 401k standpoint, from your IRA standpoint, I would talk to somebody like that, as I've done myself. And I think real estate has a lot of risk in a lot of ways. And if you're within that, people that are just starting out, I'm not a financial advisor, but I would try to find the lowest risk that I possibly could and have some liquidity. And as you said, work my way into it. And if those areas are growing and they have cash flow, as you're saying, in the hotels, I think the right deal with the right operators could turn out really well.
Yeah, you launched a REIT, right, in 21? Is that correct?
We actually didn't launch it.
Okay.
We had designed it, and we were we spent a lot of money getting it structured between you and I. And then the market changed in a way that wasn't the most accretive structure at the time, but we definitely plan to. And I think the market is changing where that REIT just might get reinvigorated in a different term with a different set of operators and partners. But I think it might have a little resurgence.
Awesome. Good to hear. We actually have some questions, so I appreciate everyone putting this in the chat. I kind of waited till we'll have a little group. So let's answer some of these questions for these people. Rod Jr. Says, how did Ari first come up with the Wall Street to Y'all Street idea?
I really appreciate that question. I wish that I was the one that coined Y'all Street myself, but I had heard it from somebody else using it almost in passing, and I was fortunate to take someone's better idea than mine and just amplify it a little bit.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And then we have a question, Rob. Oh, this conversation is pure gold. Thanks for sharing this. Appreciate you, Rob, for listening today. Thank you very much. We got the Venture Show. How can everyday investors get involved in something like this?
I think it's a great question. And if there's some very particular structural and compliance issues here that I think are very important for investors to understand. We use a third-party fund administrator out of Miami, a firm called Industry FinTech, that's really been a leader in bringing that level of compliance and data rooms and understanding for investors, because you can go through what's called a 506C model, which allows you to advertise with very strict parameters of disclosures that you make through the SEC, which allow accredited investors to invest in these types of projects under certain instances. And then also there's an incredible structure called a Reg A Plus. And a Reg A Plus allows you to register with the SEC and allows unaccredited investors to invest in some of these structures and co-invest in other deals. So I think the most important thing for everyday investors now is use the wealth of information, whether on YouTube or through your own searches, to understand how the structures work and find operators and interview them. And common sense is not so common anymore, in the sense where asking great questions and getting to understand these projects, and if the operators that you're looking to invest in aren't answering those questions, that might lead you to continue your investigation process to find the right people that fit your need, because real estate is not an overnight thing when it's done well. This is not a fix and a flip kind of deal, although I'm sure people have made a lot of money doing that. But institutional investing is typically on 4, 5, 6, 7-year runs, where these are very much marriages. These aren't dating. So getting to know the people you invest with, I think, is very, very important. And knowing that your trajectory needs to be years, not months. When in our experience, you can get the most asymmetrical risk, which means taking the least amount of risk to garner the most amount of return.
Got it. That makes sense. And we got another one here. Maria, what role does community feedback play into Ari's developments?
Thank you, Maria. It's absolutely mission critical. When I was one of the big zoning cases that I worked on in Dallas, I took over 180 meetings personally with business owners, condo owners, housing owners that were within the radius of the property we own to really understand what they wanted. And I believe, the success that we've had in these massive rezoning cases have really come more from doing what the community actually wanted versus trying to shove something down their throat that maybe a developer wanted. And what we say internally is we're trying to put unity back in community.
So, and I love that. Are you going to town halls or, spokesman or something? Okay.
I am.
Yeah, that's huge. Because that's
and
really
I enjoy it. I enjoy it.
Don't
I
lie.
enjoy it.
Jeez.
I'm a nobody from nowhere. It wasn't long ago that I was working at Johnny Rockets flipping burgers and delivering pizzas at Double Dave's. And, I enjoy being in those places and hearing the dialogue. And I don't always enjoy them disagreeing with my proposition, but I'm learning to enjoy that too.
Fair enough. And Kathy writes, can this project really bridge the gap between investors and locals?
Yes, it can. It absolutely can. And it's not just the project, it's the structure. Because if, for example, when I was first starting out, I saw this big gap between deals that rich people do and deals that regular people do. And I kept thinking, well, if rich people get all the good deals, like how are you ever supposed to get rich? And so with the right structure, if you use like a Reg A Plus as an example that allows investors to put in $1,500, and they have to be done very well. They have to be managed very well. But let's say that's structured properly. And you took a piece where 1,000 people can put in $1,500 and invest alongside a public pension fund where they have their own due diligence, they have their own access, and hopefully some sharp pencils and some smart people to do due diligence. You can have ordinary investors investing in the same deals that the smartest people in the world are doing, and doing that over time gets pretty interesting.
Sure. Yeah, that's important. It's funny you said that, and I thought to myself just this weekend, I was saying how it's crazy that the world's been around for 2,000 years, but we still have only figured out exponential growth through stocks and real estate. Like we haven't found out any other way to really generate some type of wealth other ways.
Well, Andrew Carnegie famously said that 90% of all millionaires all made it from real estate, and I don't know if that's entirely true anymore. But being a young aspiring entrepreneur, that line was certainly pretty motivating for me.
Yeah, no doubt. John writes, how does innovation shape the future of real estate like this?
I think it's mission critical. I think that this is the most ripe asset class on the planet for innovation because there's been such a lack of it for so long. And the thing about real estate is everything you do involves real estate. You are in real estate at this moment. I'm sitting in a piece of real estate. You're sitting in a place of real estate. Rockets take off from a piece of real estate. And so just the sheer breadth of you drive your car, land is on real estate. This desperate need for innovation, because innovation really happens for two reasons in my experience. One is from inspiration, and the other is from desperation. And most of the time, desperation is what leads it. And real estate is in a case of a desperate need for innovation, which I think is going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, desperation is fear, and fear is the number one motivator.
Yes, it is.
So like with land being said, we can't make more land here. So are you going to
Not
look
yet? You ask the Saudis, they're trying to figure it out. I'll be in Dubai later in December, and they're starting to make islands and make all sorts of stuff. So I thought that was true too, but it might not be.
Maybe. But the expansion, my question was going to be just expansion. Are you looking to move abroad, and maybe into Dubai and Middle East?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
100%. Like we're, the scope that we're looking, like I'm one of those people that I like to, think big and look big, but go small, so we keep our eye on a vision that's very expansive, that's global, that's inclusive, that's multicultural, multi-generational. but make sure that we're laser focused on building the apartment complex on South Congress here around the corner and watching the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, I think of Dana White, if you're familiar with like the
Of course.
UFC, and just from a business mind of moving, and having these venues. And he went to the Middle East when people probably were like, "What are you doing?" I mean, he was just so innovative on that, and
And
even Africa.
inclusive, and very
Yes,
inclusive. And
very.
he's I don't know Dana myself. We have some very close mutual friends, and they speak very, very highly of him, not only as an individual but as a businessman as well, which I think run in tandem.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does. I mean, you can't in any business, you can't last long with your name tarnished. It just won't
Yeah.
happen. Next one here. Bradley, what kind of partnerships made this vision possible?
It's a great question. Well, there's structural partnerships, I think, through the structures, whether through LLCs, whether other corporate structures, and those partnerships have limited partners or LPs, that investors that have come in, general partnerships of operators. So as an attorney, I think a lot about the legal partnership, the legal structure of what things look like and how the pass-through taxes work, how the K-1s look. And so I think that type of structure for us has been mission critical, understanding that first and foremost, getting the legal structure right, where the corporations are they in Delaware, are they in Florida? How does that serve the investor, protect the investor, insulate them from certain risk factors, et cetera. And then beyond that, it was so many different types of folks, financial advisors working with us, friends and family trusting us, investing with us early on, partnership with, my best friend since 7th grade, who's our chief of staff. And,
Wow.
seeing that, life, Mark Twain used to say, I hate when people say life is short, because life is the longest thing you do. and so you definitely find that there's some parts that are long, and these partnerships have been mostly friendships.
Yeah, I feel like from a United States perspective, it was built on a lawyer, a banker, and an insurance agent all sitting around. And, and that's why your grandfather knew what he was doing. Hey, become a lawyer first, because the rules, how everything is supposed to be manifested and work. But I want to take this question a little bit different. I want to turn it, from a partnership perspective. But, how were you able to really create, have an idea and then manifest it? And it sounds like you have a close-knit friendships, with people that you still are friends with from 7th grade. But how were you able to really kind of lift it up?
I appreciate the question. I'm a huge proponent of personal development. I'll tell you, 2 weeks ago, I was doing the Unleash the Power Within seminar with Tony Robbins, virtually, in my house, jumping up and screaming and writing my goals out. And been fortunate enough to have great life coaches and business coaches and great mentors. The work I've done with transcendental meditation that I learned from Ray Dalio, work with Dr. Joe Dispenza. I did 6 or 7 7-day meditation retreats this year with Dr. Joe, and finding that the inward work for me personally has been the most important type of work that I have done as well, and focusing on the health and wellness has been a huge component of my life. And now, we have these, fun words like biohacking and all these other things, but, eating the things we know we should eat, and taking some vitamins and moving your body vigorously. But paying attention to the 3-dimensional being that I think humans are from a mental, spiritual, and a physical standpoint, first and foremost, and focusing on the partnership that I have with myself. And making sure that that partnership between all these people that are screaming in my head start to get along a little bit better. And the better that they got along, the better the business did.
Yeah, no doubt. I have a podcast and, you're going to be a guest on there. And the whole reason of the podcast were the 4 pillars of my life, which was health, wealth, love, and happiness.
Beautiful.
And happiness is the internal, love is the external. And then obviously it doesn't matter if you have wealth if you don't have your health. So, really having those types of people on to really, enhance my knowledge. And that's right. That's the first partnership. The first partnership is with yourself. So, you just hit it right on the head on that. And then we got another comment here from Gold Coach 𝐒𝐔𝐁𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐓 Great conversation. Appreciate you listening. And yeah, we have 465 people listening to us right now. So it's been a great success. And I would say, with all these people listening, what do you want them to get out of this? What do you really want them to learn and understand that we had this conversation today?
Oh, that's a lovely question, and I think that the most important, I can just say for me, because I think advice is kind of like a hallucination, because it's all you can understand is from this very limited vantage point that you have, and you can't understand the other person and all the perspectives and things that they come with. But what I can say is, in my experience as a developer of millions of square feet of real estate, dealing with public pension plans, insurance companies, hundreds of, thousands of investors from all different walks of life, I find that personal development is the most important before any type of business development, in my experience. So, and it's something you can control, because there's so many things in business that are just out of your control, environmental, interest rates, whatever that happens. But the times that have been the toughest for me in my life, controlling what I put in my mouth, controlling that I went and moved my body, controlling that I sat down and closed my eyes and found a moment of equanimity, paid the greatest dividends of any business that I ever did.
You sound like a man that has lost some weight.
I have lost a lot more than weight.
Understood. That's awesome. No, I appreciate your candor. Appreciate you being honest today. Very nice to meet you. And man, I wish you nothing but the best. Great success to you and your company. What now? You have multiple companies, right? So, is it Rastegar Capital?
Sure. Rastegar Capital. Rastegar Capital is our overarching investment business. But as a real estate investor, operator, you get up involved in a lot of different types of ancillary businesses. And as you become vertically integrated, there's so many downstream economies that happen, whether the technologies in bill pay and in the apartment business, or roofing, electricians and plumbers, and all these different pieces. So we end up working through different pieces. And over time, as you hit scale, you start to refine those businesses, develop those businesses, grow those businesses. But this is certainly the very beginning of my career, the beginning of this firm, and just laying the groundwork for what the future is going to be.
Awesome. As we wrap up, I guess you said it earlier today, so let's just get the elephant out of the room with AI. What are you? I mean, obviously we talked about ChatGPT, but just what are you seeing how that's going to be implemented into just what you're building today? You talked about 3D buildings per se. So what other mechanisms are you planning on using moving in 2026?
Well, I look at AI. It was explained to me by one of the greatest technologists in the history of mankind, quite frankly, explained to me to think of AI in the same way that we think of electricity, and meaning that it's the undercurrent of, we have electricity running this call at this moment. And
Correct.
So we don't think of electricity anymore as being a thing. It's just ubiquitous, and it's a part it enables, but it's what charges that smartphone. It's what brings to life these things. The way he explained it to me is AI will be that same level of undercurrent for everything that we do as people, as businesses, over the next 4, 5, 10, 15 years. And so with that said, we're certainly going to plug in all our businesses.
Awesome, man. Well, this was great. That's the epic lunch and learn. That's what we do. We just have these conversations, we talk, and we try to grow and we learn. And, hopefully if we pass anything to you, this was episode 50. So it's a big monumental moment. Love to have you back on, Ari, when maybe we hit 100 and just see what you're up to. But yeah, what future projects do you got going on or leading into the new year?
We have a lot of very, very, very exciting ones that some of them we can talk about, some of them we can't just yet. But the 3D printing development that we're doing in Austin called Infinity Flats, which you can get some information on our site, is going to be incredible. It's 50 plus townhouses to 3D print. If you think about those implications, it's very exciting for us. Continuing to develop this incredible multifamily project on South Congress, which is the most decorated street in all of Austin. It's on 2 hard corners. It's called Infinity Living. It's very exciting. And so there's certainly a lot to come and a lot of stuff that's going to help a lot of people. And that's what excites me most.
Everyone, I want you to make sure you stay close to Ari Rastegar Capital. Make sure you pay attention and see what he's going to be doing. The Oracle of Austin was with me today. Appreciate you. We'll be back tomorrow with L'Oreal Flowers, and want everyone to have an epic day. Ari, you as well. Have a great day.
Thank you, sir.
All right.